We are indeed grateful and thankful for this priceless privilege of preaching. And we know that it's because of his grace and his mercy that we have not been consumed. I'm going to share my Easter speech, and we can go down from this place. John chapter 4. John chapter 4. There's some words here that arrested my attention. John chapter 4, starting at verse number 27. John chapter 4, starting at verse number 27. When you got it, say, I got it. If you don't have it, say, wait. We're going to give you a few seconds. John chapter 4. And I'm reading from the NIV. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking to a woman. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking to her? Then verse 28, then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him some food? Verse 34, my food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They're ripe for the harvest. Amen. You may be seated. And just for a few moments, I want to talk about excuses for evangelistic failure. Excuses for evangelistic failure. Excuses are tools of incompetence used to build monuments of nothingness, and those that build upon them are nothing but excuses, excuses, excuses. And today, in all honesty, I've discovered that we as God's people have excuses when it comes to doing God's work. Now listen, I've discovered that some excuses are valid, but at the end of the day, no matter how you wrap it up, it's still an excuse. Can I prove it? On your job, they give you a certain amount of times to be late per month, per week. Now listen, one day you could have woke up late, and we do that. Another day you could have had some car trouble. But then let's say the third time that you're late, which is in fact a legitimate excuse, and your kid is sick. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is, no matter what excuse you use, you wasn't where you're supposed to be doing what you agreed to say that you were going to do. And today, I don't know who I'm talking to, but to be honest, we use excuses why we can't share the gospel of Jesus Christ with people. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it, but let's jump right into the text. Y'all, there was a woman and Jesus having a conversation. I know you heard the story before, the woman at the well, and they have this long back and forth conversation. But at the end of the day, Jesus sharing the gospel with her, she eventually ended up accepting him as her Lord and Savior. But here, this is where we pick up today, is at the end of the conversation. And y'all, Jesus is sitting there having a conversation with her, and his disciples walk up. Now listen, they come at the end of the conversation, hear me, And they walk up, and the first thing is they assume, let's look at the text, let's see what it says. They show up and they ask, why are you talking to her? Now let's do some examination. First of all, historically, Jews and Samaritans were not supposed to be having conversation because of the fact that basically the Jews thought that they were better than the Samaritans. And so y'all, they figured, why would we be having a conversation with these people that's lower than us? Let me come sit on somebody's row. A lot of times, here's my first point. We don't share the gospel because we don't think that people would be interested. Look at the text and say, why are you talking to her? And a lot of times we don't have conversations because of the fact that we don't think people will be interested. Matter of fact, let me come closer on somebody's row. You don't even think that they deserve to hear the gospel. I know you have those people. Well, let me just be honest. I've had people in my life, I don't think that they deserve Jesus at all. I think that some people should not pass go and go straight to, yeah. So y'all, here it is. We don't think that people will be interested. They don't understand, how could Jesus have this conversation with this woman that if he really knew her, and y'all, the real fact is he does know her. And I thank God that he overlooks my issues. I thank God that he overlooks my shortcomings. And he looked beyond my faults and sees my needs. I don't know who I'm talking to today, but I know that there's some people in this room, factually speaking, that he looks beyond. Y'all, I know and listen, everything that we're talking about ain't past tense. Y'all, to be honest, there's some stuff that we doing right now. And if we go home and look in the closet, every skeleton in the closet ain't just bones. Some of those skeletons got meat on them. Do me a favor, talk to somebody for the first time and say, I ain't stopped doing everything. So y'all, he talks to this woman, and his disciples ask, why you talking to her? And remember, she was messing around with other folks' husbands. And y'all, I'm gonna tell you, I thank God that he don't stop when it comes to shortages. And I came to challenge you today to say, listen, don't judge who to share the gospel with. That we got a responsibility to share the gospel with everybody. Let me come a little bit closer. Don't discriminate to say who can and who cannot have the gospel. Because if we be honest, they didn't shortcut us when we needed the gospel. And so I'm gonna be honest, it'll be easy for us to judge ahead of time how we think somebody will respond about the good news. But we really don't know. That's why we got the responsibility to share with everybody. Now listen, y'all, let's look at the text. Now listen, now here's my issue, because saved people and unsaved people respond to things differently. And here it is. Jose, the church should be setting the atmosphere. They should be setting the temperature for circumstances. They should be open to receive somebody coming in here with a short skirt. They should be open to receiving somebody smelling like alcohol. They should be open. But the first thing we start doing is questioning and looking down on them. Y'all hear the disciples right here. They should have been open that Jesus was talking to this lost woman. But they had a problem because of her condition. Let's look at the text, y'all. Don't think I'm lying. Bible says, look what happens. He says, they respond. Look how they respond differently. They ask, why you talking to her? But look what she does. She goes and starts telling people about Jesus. Y'all ain't even hearing me today. See, that's how it is. We can't get too comfortable comfortable in our relationship with Jesus, because a lot of times when we get comfortable, we think we got it together when we really don't. See, the text called them disciples, which suggests that you're still in a learning process. Talk to somebody for the second time and tell them, neighbor, you ain't there. You're still learning. So y'all listen, here it is. They say people won't be interested. But y'all, my second point, because the clock say 20 minutes. The next thing is she says, come see a man. She goes out and starts telling people. And the Bible says, and they responded to the gospel, and they came and began to hear. But here it is. In my opinion, I would think that the disciples would get on board and start sharing too. But they don't, and they get distracted by food. See, let me be honest. Y'all know we can't hear folk when we're hungry. That's why many of you got to get your breakfast before you come to 9 o'clock service. Because if you don't, you're gonna be thinking about food. And real honest, some of you think about food now. What I'm gonna put on when I get home? Where we gonna go to eat after church? Because food can sometimes be a distraction. Look at the text. Verse number 31, they say, meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. Y'all, they say, Rabbi, eat something. In verse 32, he says, well, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Then in verse 33, he jumps down, he says, then his disciples said to the other, could someone have brought him food? And he goes and say, my food, said Jesus, to do the will of him that sent me. Now, what we got to do is back up. Now, listen. My second point is that we're too busy. Disciples, they brought the food from town. They came and they attempted to give Jesus something to eat. But look at his response. His response is that, listen, what I'm doing now is bigger than my natural need. Hear what I'm saying? That we got to get to the place that we can't let our natural needs be distractions for spiritual situations. Here it is. He says, now listen, let me tell you. They so wrapped up in food that they get confused. They say, well, did he eat while we was gone? Did somebody bring him some food? And y'all, to be honest, he was saying that my food is to do the will. In other words, you should get energy from sharing Jesus. See, that's where your gas should come from. Listen, when you should get the feeling from sharing him with other folk. Now listen, Jesus is so concerned with the matter at hand that he doesn't even want to stop and eat. Somebody say he ain't stopping to eat. Now listen, in other words, he did not want to get distracted by other stuff. Let me tell somebody, it's time for us to stop getting distracted on why we can't and don't share Jesus with people. Here it is. The world is dying and going to hell. And we walk past people every day and we don't share the gospel. Now listen, y'all, let me tell you how we can't get distracted. Y'all, let me tell you a story. There was a man who, he was an older man. He had took some medicine and he began to choke on his medicine. And he fell and he hit his head. They rushed him to the hospital. They sat him in a chair in the waiting room. And y'all, 24 hours goes past and they don't give him any medical attention. He dies from a stroke. And the whole time, the nurses and doctors was in the room playing cards. And y'all, a lot of times, we're caught up in insignificant stuff while the situation with people's lives are at stake, and we let them die because we're distracted by some foolishness. Y'all tell somebody, don't get too busy. Because see, here's the thing. They were responsible. They were responsible for sharing the gospel. They were responsible for issuing this man medical attention, and they didn't. How many of us neglect our jobs and don't do what we should? And people die while we're on the clock. I'm gone, y'all. I'm gone. Y'all, let me say this. Let me be honest. Too many churches have become distracted with the mission God has given us. The original mission was not the usher board. The original mission was not the choir. The original mission, Jesus told us, he says, hey, Matthew 28:19, make disciples and teach them everything I taught you. That's the important mission we got to get back to. In other words, what has happened is the churches begin to major in the minor instead of minoring in the major. In other words, we make the unimportant stuff the important stuff, and the important stuff we neglect. I don't know who I'm talking to today. We got to get back to the original mission. And I ain't come to be offensive, but I discovered that the older and bigger a church is, the easier it is for them to get distracted. I'm moving. He said, my will. In other words, let me tell you, we in Western Christianity, I've discovered that we are so caught up in us and what we want. You know, the gospel that preaches big houses, big cars, me is coming to me. Look at your neighbor, I'm getting mines, and mines is coming to me. And that's what we think about. But Jesus tells us, he says, hey, if you're going to come to me, you got to first deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. Let me make it real personal. Y'all, right now I'm in a place where I'm getting back to self-denial. See, if you can see, I love food. Me and food are very acquainted. We're not strangers. But what happened was my inner skinny man began to have a conversation with my outer fat man. And they began to talk about how distant they've become. And so what happened in the conversation, they said, we got to meet. But the only way they're going to meet is that they got to give up something. In other words, I got to give up what I love, Pepsi. Y'all, I love Pepsi. But I understand that keeps the inner skinny man and the outer fat man from meeting. So what I got to do is I got to do some self-denial. And I ain't trying to front on nobody or be a hater, but there's some other people in the room that need to do some self-denial. And your inner skinny man and your outer fat man need to do some meeting. And so, but the only way that I could do that is through self-denial. I got to give up what I love in order to do what I really need to do. I'm getting out of here. I'm getting ready to take my seat. But y'all, here it is. We got to start denying ourselves. Y'all, third thing is, y'all, and I suffer from this, is verse number 35 is I'll do it later. A lot of stuff we don't do because we say I'll do it tomorrow. Now, I said I gave up Pepsi, right? And gave up sweets, except from yesterday I did have one Snicker bar ice cream. But y'all, I gave up the Pepsi and the sweets. But I keep saying to myself, I need to go to the gym. But what I do is, I say I'm going to do it when? And y'all, what I discovered is, in the last week that I've been trying, tomorrow ain't never came. And so, here it is. Jesus issues a challenge for them and say, listen, don't you say that there's still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Y'all, in other words, they said, what they were basically saying is, don't y'all say you still got time? But in essence, we really don't. My question is, are you hoping it will come later? Is that why we put it off? Because we're hoping that what we really want, or that time to share, or that time to be effective will come later? I'm be honest, we're wrong. Because look at the fact, the Samaritans were there right then. And I'm going to be honest with you. The real answer, the fact of the matter is, as I close, that we have to stop putting off tomorrow what we can do today. Because if we're honest, what are we waiting for? The time to share Christ with people is now. Y'all listen, Jesus is saying that it is urgent that the gospel is planted in the hearts of men everywhere. And I'm going to tell you as I take my seat, don't wait for a different time, or don't wait for a better time. The harvest is now. Look what Jesus says. He says, listen, he says, verse 36, well, let me go back. He says, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They're ripe for harvest. Clause B, clause A of verse number 36 says, even now. I'm out of here. We don't have to wait tomorrow to share. The time is now. Let me come sit close. Whatever that thing we've been putting off, the time to do it is now. Because if I'm honest, tomorrow is not promised. So I'm saying, go do the work of sharing the gospel right now. Because just be honest, just think if somebody had waited to share Jesus with you. Just think of how much your lives have been affected as a result of Christ coming in. Listen, I know I got some ex-drinkers because he came in your life. I know I got some ex-smokers. And I'm not just talking about cigarettes. I'm talking about the funny cigarettes. I know I got some people that used to be benevolent with their body, but they're not benevolent no more. Because of the fact of the matter, at the end of the day, Christ came into your life to change you. And at the end of the day, you and I are the end results of people loving us enough to tell us, for the wages of sin is death, and the gift of God is eternal life. And I'm going to tell y'all, we got to stop talking about the drug boys and stop talking about the twerkers. Because at the end of the day, what's going to change them is that if you share Jesus with them. And so let's move the excuses. I'm scared. Let me give you a practical way, and I'm going to take my seat. I'm scared. I don't know enough gospel. I don't know enough Bible. I'm going to give you a practical way. Here's 3 questions. And then we're going to pray. 3 questions is, what was your life like before Christ? How did you come to know Christ? And what has your life been like since you've had him? And what that equals is your testimony. And all I'm trying to tell somebody is that at the end of the day, You have a responsibility to tell your story and then close it out with his story. And I want to let somebody know that they marched him from judgment hall to judgment hall. And he never said a mumbling word. The record is they stuck nails in his hands and nails in his feet. And he never said a mumbling word. The Bible says that they raised him up and they dropped the cross. And he never said a mumbling word. Y'all, he put his head in the locks of his shoulders, and the record is he died. Y'all, he died, and guess what? The fact of the matter is he did not stay dead, but the record says early on the third day morning, he got up on cemetery soil and declared, I was he that was dead, and behold, I'm alive forevermore. I thank God for his grace. I don't know anybody else, but I'm going to be honest, I got his grace. Y'all, his grace allows me to grow. His grace allows me to change. Bother somebody for the last time, tell them, neighbor, I thank God for his grace. For it was grace that brought me safe thus far. His grace is what's going to lead me on. I thank God for his grace. At the end of the day, there's somebody else that need to experience his grace. But they won't know that they got his grace until you be the one to share it. So I petition you to go tell somebody, that neighbor, that person on your job, your family, somebody that you know don't know Jesus, share the gospel with them. So at least at the end of the day, they won't ever be able to say that they never heard the gospel shared with them. So here it is. If you're in this room today, I'm here by his grace. I'm here to tell you that God is not looking for perfect people. Because if he was looking for somebody perfect, I wouldn't be talking to you. But he's looking for people to say yes to him. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear me, open the door. He said, now come in and we'll have fellowship. But we can't have real fellowship till we open the door. Let him into your heart, into your life today. And I promise when you do that, you will never be the same. So with every head bowed, every eye closed, if that's you, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, and you know without a shadow of a doubt that you need to get acquainted with him, because if you don't, you're going to spend an eternity in hell. Take advantage, because guess what? Tomorrow is not promised. And so if we're talking to you, if I'm talking to you, if that's you, meet us here at the altar. We got deacons and people that can share with you the gospel. They can share Jesus with you.